Hoosier architect and designer Avriel Shull dedicated her adult life to creating outstanding mid-century houses, neighborhoods, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, and even a library. Many of these unique designs can be seen on the north side of Indianapolis, Indiana, tucked away in cozy neighborhoods. Today, I'll be speaking with homeowner Ross Reller and historian Connie Zeigler to find out more about this extraordinary woman. So Ross, how did you come to buy this house?
Well, it was on Zillow for about 3 hours, and we had been looking for a house on the north side of Indianapolis. We had put a vision board together with a lot of different things that were important to us. Shade, we wanted a ranch, single story. If we had mature trees, that was a bonus. We wanted a neighborhood that had a lot of diversity, and we knew nothing about Avriel Shull.
So you didn't know this was an Avriel Shull design
We
house?
had no idea. We kind of felt like we had found a Picasso at a garage sale. It was just so pleasant to know that we had something really unique.
Connie, how are you today?
I'm fine, Ann. How are you?
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about Avriel Shull?
Yes, I could tell you a lot about Avriel Shull, but I'll try and limit it. She was born in Carmel, Indiana, when it was a little one-horse farming town. Her dad was a vice president of one of the Indianapolis banks, and Avriel was a precocious girl who was really capable of a lot of artistic endeavors. She could sew, she could paint, she could figure out a lot of things. She was a great cook. She decorated her family home as a young girl, sewing all the slip covers for the furniture and the draperies, and so she started out in that way. And then she went to Carmel High School and had a really serious car accident in her teens. I think she was 16, and was injured seriously enough that she was in the hospital for a long time, and then didn't get to go back to school for the year, but nevertheless graduated, I think, a year early or several months early when she was only 17, and then started her own business. She had several businesses. She was a milliner. She had a shop in a downtown high-rise, and she was a wedding planner for a while, including planning her own wedding. That might have just been something to say, because her own wedding was covered in Life magazine, and so she might have, played it a little bit bigger than it actually was. But she did make all of the outfits, all of her own dress, all of the bridesmaids' dresses. She planned a wedding that had a dove release, which was not quite as successful perhaps as she thought. There's a great picture in the Life magazine coverage of all the women like covering their heads with their fancy hats on and things. So Avriel was just an extremely capable Renaissance woman who could do just about anything, and at one point decided she was going to build houses, and so learned how to do it.
Now, did she get formal training to design those houses?
She went to Heron Art School in Indianapolis, and I think also went to Butler for a while, did not graduate from either, no college degree, and no training in architecture, except on the job. She was hired by Carmel developer to do his copies of his plans, and she started noodling around with those plans a little bit. She read a huge book about how to build a house, and worked in a scale model for a while. The year after her wedding, Life magazine came back and did a follow-up story on her and her now husband, R.K. Shull, who was an Indianapolis Times syndicated columnist. Impressive credentials these two had. When they came back, she was working on the scale model of what became her first house, the Golden Unicorn, and they took a picture of the model.
That is fascinating. I love that she sort of did that training herself and
absolutely
educated herself about that.
So how did you find out more about Avriel and your house?
So we knew that Thornhurst in Carmel was a National Register of Historic Places designee, and I went to the Indiana State Museum. They had really quite an archive of her stuff, and we found the exact plans for this house in the archives. I took my cell phone out, made lots of photographs, and we really just started a love affair with Avriel, trying to find out everything we could about who she was, why she was, really strong, independent woman at a time when that was uncommon. And we fell in love with her. We fell in love with the house.
Yeah, so after she did her first house, which was the Golden Unicorn in 1953, when she was still in her early 20s, then in 1956, her father had some land on what became West Main Street in Carmel, and she developed that land herself. She laid out she designed the street layout, she designed the sewers, all the water through it, and all the houses. At that time, she started designing with 3 house plans, sent them to Federal Housing Administration to see if she could get them approved for loans for vets coming out of World War II. This is 1956. They were approved, and so she built the first 3 houses. All of the houses were built on speculation, and then ultimately built 21 houses. First house 1956, and the last house 1972 or 73, I think, in Thornhurst.
I think this was kind of a middle-class house design of the time. A lot of her homes are known for being really consignment work from the rich and famous of Indianapolis. This was just a middle-class house that was sold on Bantam books as a space plan, a floor plan, and the builder who constructed this did it on spec.
Can you tell me a little bit about the aspects of the house that are kind of Avriel aspects?
Sure. The post and beam construction allows the 16-foot wall of glass. There's a beam that runs through the middle of the living room, so we have vaulted ceilings really throughout the house. The family room has a vaulted ceiling, the living room, the foyer. That was one of the most spectacular features of the house when we came in, because it just opened up to the backyard. We already had a lot of vegetation here, but the previous owner had not done any landscaping, so we felt like we'd been given a blank slate. The other feature that we found after we pulled up carpet was parquet floor in the family room that was original to the house.
Now, sometimes she did design and build, but that's not the case here.
That's not the case here. This was built in 77 and probably near the end of her life. We have no evidence that she was ever on site, but it contains the fireplace of stone that is very distinctive in her homes. Obviously the post and beam construction, but other than that, it has no particular markings of Avriel.
Except for the one that's just like it in Thornhurst.
There is.
Oh, I always want to mention too that she really designed for women on the interior. She was a woman who did everything. She sewed, she cooked, she canned, and her kitchens have tons of storage space always. There's usually an open plan, at least to a dining area, really well laid out, and usually more than one bathroom. And I think that she was especially thinking about women of that period.
I like that too.
Yeah.
So have you made any changes to the house since you bought it?
We've made several fairly significant changes. We removed a wall that separated the kitchen from the dining room to open up the view of the backyard to the kitchen. But whenever we've been faced with an opportunity to make a change, we always kind of step back and ask, what would Avriel do? We're trying to make sure we're faithful to her original intent, the spirit that she had in designing the house. And I think we've been okay with it. It's kind of hard to know. She's been gone for a long time.
Yeah, well, it looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So after her death, her untimely death at the age of 45 in 1976, that same developer that she had worked for many years earlier and had done his copies, moved several already built homes into the addition to Carmel that was Thornhurst. So there are several kind of 1940s, what we'd call minimal traditional houses that are there. Out of I think there are 21 of her houses and maybe 4 or 5 other houses built in Thornhurst Addition.
That's really amazing. And I assume you've done a lot of research on Avriel, and she has more houses than that in Indianapolis, right?
Oh, I've done so much research on Avriel. She became my muse in some ways. I like to say I'm as in love with her as a straight woman can be with another dead straight woman. I just adore her, and she's so impressive. Yeah, so I've since then, in actually 2019, listed another one of her districts on the National Register of Historic Places, and that would be Ladywood, which was initially built as an apartment complex and is now condos. I have a database on a blog of her houses that I know about, known houses, and it's over 100 that are not all in Indianapolis, many in Carmel, as you know, and many around central Indiana. There's one in Evansville, there are some in northern Indiana, Lafayette, I think, and also she did houses in a kind of a resort area in West Virginia, I believe, and a library in West Virginia. So she was really extremely prolific in housing. She did a commercial building that was an award winner. It's on English Avenue, the REO building. So yeah, a woman who just could hardly be stopped until she was eventually killed by the diabetes that she didn't treat.
Oh, that's too bad.
I was doing a presentation about Avriel, which I've done many of, at the Indianapolis Propylaeum, and I mentioned that whoever wrote her obituary, or one of the New York city papers, had lied about her age or had used her. Yeah, she had begun to lie about her age apparently, and her obituary said she was only 43, but she was actually 45 or 46 at that time. And someone said, who worked with RK, said, oh, RK wrote that obituary. And so I like to say that find yourself a man who will lie about your age in your obituary.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, apparently he just adored her. He was still living in the house that she had designed for their family at her death. It was never completed, but he ultimately sold that house and it was demolished for development that didn't happen, maybe has still not happened on North Meridian Street in Carmel.
Okay. Thank you so much, Connie, for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you so much, Ross, for sharing your story with us about your house.
Well, it's been great fun. We really feel privileged to be in an Avriel house.